Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about Grand Cathay, or more so the possible future for Grand Cathay in Warhammer 3. You see, right now there are 3 legendary lords, Miao Yin, Zhao Ming and Yuan Bo, 3 Cathayan dragons of the active 5 dragon children. And it has been like that for a while. Mind you, Cathay hasn't gotten a lot of DLC since the Backlash of Shadows of Change, and Warhammer 3 has been drip-feeding DLCs in all honesty. Now that's going to change with regards to a brand new content pack in the form of a character pack that we're seeing at some point this year, BHASHIVA and the Tiger Warriors. Very cool character, very cool units from what we know of so far, and a lot of people are quite excited and also a little bit confused as to why the Cathayan dragons weren't at the forefront once again. Admittedly, I'm also kind of weirded out by that. While the idea of having in some subcultures is quite cool, there are 2 more missing dragon children, and I do think that it's going to be only a matter of time until we see them. Of the 2 missing, Yin Yin the Sea Dragon is probably the most well known. Based in Fuchao, unfortunately no artwork exists of her. She protects the eastern provinces and leads the Cathayan navies. More and more we're finding out that she was in fact the Cathayan that went into Lustria with a failed invasion. This is becoming more cemented with Warhammer the Old World, as Cathay is about to get its 3rd arcane journal alongside its next lore dump. The next is Li Dao the Fire Dragon, who has been described as a warden of the south, the master of the burning winds, and is protecting the southern provinces from the assaults from Ind. As we now know, there might be a little bit of Tzeentchian works going down there, the Naga of Koresh, and of course, in some cases, the Monkey King. We don't know much about Li Dao, which sucks considering that, well, fire dragons are generally quite cool, so it would be nice to know a little bit more, but keep in mind that it's only a matter of time until we maybe see him in Total War Warhammer, and yeah, we'll get some lore dumps with the Old World as more and more arcane journals keep coming out. There's like 3 so far, which is wild. There's obviously another character that everyone is waiting for. That is the Monkey King in the Mountains of Heaven, which we're going to have to wait and see if that eventually happens. Maybe it happens during the End Times DLC, or it gets treated as a race of its own, but time will tell because, well, you know, Nagash got split up into his own thing, which is kind of expected. I could see that happening for the Monkey King also, depending on where it goes. There have been rumors that maybe Games Workshop don't want to do it, but I very much doubt that, considering that the Monkey King does get a decent amount of mentions and has been mentioned once again in the most recent Arcane Journal. So the future of Grand Cathay could be very bright, provided that Warhammer 3 gets the attention that it was deserved, and Creative Assembly were telling the truth when they said that there's loads of plans for the future. Potentially 6 legendary lords in total, maybe even 7 if a previous leak does come to pass, which half of it has already done so there's an assumption that that could be the case. Now there's a few things that we do need to talk about when it comes to Grand Cathay. Roster-wise, they feel very good at the moment. 1 DLC brought them in line with everyone else, and they've got a lot of different options. I do think that we're going to see a lot more though, because 1, Grand Cathay is a new race, so stuff can literally be pulled out of thin air. This is something that we know of, especially as Grand Cathay continues to evolve for the tabletop. Rosters in the tabletop tend to be a little bit larger than what we currently have for Grand Cathay, even though we still don't have most of those things already available in Total War in the tabletop. I do imagine a lot more will come out. Despite the fact that the roster does look good, there are some holes still available. Very briefly, we can look at stuff like, you know, generic spellcaster lords that aren't the Shugengen, because a lot of people don't really like the laws of Yin and Yang, so being able to have access to the Law of Metal with a lord option, or the Law of Heavens would help quite a lot. We do know that we're going to get a decent amount of Laws of Magic thanks to the new Tigermen, but that's going to be another hero unit rather than a lord. The lord is an anti-large. The biggest issue that I have with the roster so far is the lack of an engineer. So we have a decent amount of war machines and nothing to really buff them up. We do know of the existence of war artificers, which would field that role, but nothing has really happened with regards to that. War artificers have been mentioned since prior to release of Grand Cathay, and have been mentioned many times throughout the Arcane Journals also. They exist, and it's a very odd thing. So many factions have an engineer type character, and it's very odd that it's just not happened to Cathay, considering the amount of gunpowder and just general artillery or war machines that are available. And I do imagine that there might be more in the future. Thanks to the old world, we know that there are other named sentinels out there. It's not just Setang the Watcher. So this is something that I think a lot of people have been kind of hyped up about. Mostly because while Setang is cool, the bow is a bit weird. You know, people want more of a defensive one, which we can see a small image of that on screen right now. There's other ones down south. It shows that there's a lot more potential and there's a lot more about Grand Cathay, which really isn't out there just yet. And going back to various different interviews and just source information that we know of from the most recent interpretation for Grand Cathay, we know that we're missing out on monkey warriors. These things are a thing. Cathayan ogres, again, mentioned throughout areas, and also the fact that we do have ogre loaders in the tabletop. There has been talk, obviously, about previous leaks of a faction focused around Mung the Brutal, so it can make sense that there might be an ogre Cathayan pack at some point, in a very similar vein to what's happening now with BHASHIVA and the Tiger Warriors. The War Artificers, again engineers, something that I feel is the biggest missing hole for the Cathayan faction so far. Spellcaster Lords, if we have hero variants, there's very likely a Lord variant too, a Supreme version. There was a mention of like Celestial Dragon Monks, so again, monk units kind of expected, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something akin to that, like the Nanmon style, you know, fire dancers and stuff, but I'm going by what we know of right now. This is very small, and keep in mind that most of these units were expected during Shadows of Change, and then obviously Shadows of Change was completely left field, which was cool. You know, we ended up getting the Jet Lion, the Jade Lion, and all the rest. So it shows that there's still holes that need to be filled in for Grand Cathay, and there's still a lot more potential. I wouldn't be surprised if this ended up being one of the factions with the most content, for obvious reasons. You know, they want to hit that market in China, and it's a very dual way of doing it, through Total War and also through the Old World. Now, we do have to talk about a few things. Obviously, Grand Cathay is extremely congested right now, so the addition of extra legendary lords might be a little problematic, considering obviously the congestion of the map, which we've spoken about many, many times. Creative Assembly don't seem to want to acknowledge the map issues, which is very bizarre. I'm not sure if that's a Games Workshop issue or if it's more of a Creative Assembly issue. But Grand Cathay is very, very packed in. You can have lords in other locations, but it does seem like Creative Assembly with Yombo want to add in the situation of being able to go back. Ultimately, I agree with that, but it seems very, very weird. Yombo shouldn't have been in Lustria anyway. It just feels very odd, especially since the Shadows of Change story didn't really have that much to do with Lustria. BHASHIVA, for example, has been described as a Lord of Xiangyang, but I don't think that she's going to be in Xiangyang, as Zhao Ming is the actual Lord of Xiangyang, and obviously he has a quest to go get an item from that. You don't want to put another ally in there unless it's going to lead to Confederation, which would be kind of boring. So I imagine that she'll actually be moved to a location where there is a very obvious blank spot, that being the areas down there in the Southlands, which I know some people don't want that, but I imagine Kingdom of Beasts would just make sense. It is a blank spot. There's a minor Skaven faction. I know, it's not great, but at the end of the day, there is not much that can be done here. I've been looking around the Warhammer world. The congestion is really, really bad. Obviously, we got a bunch of legendary lords coming in alongside the End Times and BHASHIVA, so they need to make sure that stuff is being fit into areas where it makes sense, alongside with a good campaign. Whether or not she has a transportation mechanic to go back is going to have to come into question, but you know, I hope it won't be too long until we see BHASHIVA. The Monkey King will have to be in the Mountains of Heaven, right? They'll have to open up those mountains in the northern border of Ind, and there you go. The problem is it does lead into other issues, but I don't imagine the Monkey King starting in any other location, and I do imagine him having some sort of teleport mechanic to just show up in different locations just to get some battles in, very similar to that of Oxyotl of Arbal. I know people wouldn't be too keen on that, but I imagine that if that's the case, there would be other mechanics to make him a little bit more unique. It just makes sense because of how the Monkey King is interpreted through like Chinese folklore, popping up in various different locations, being a bit of a nuisance, but also a bit of a hero, or an anti-hero, I guess is the better term. I just can't see him in other locations unless they open up Ind or Koresh, because, yeah, it just doesn't make sense. I've been trying to think about this for quite some time now. I've been on a real big Grand Cathay kick lately. Obviously, you know, I've been sorting out the Cathayan units and stuff, so that's been my mentality. But the issue here is it does kind of screw over Li Dao, who, as far as we're aware, is in Fu Hong. The problem is obviously another Cathayan Lord too close. It becomes a bit of an issue when it comes to expanding. We've seen that with Miao Yin and Zhao Ming, by the way. This is why the map is way too small and should have been at least scaled up by another 50%. There is congestion. You're not really incentivized to fight your own allies. This would be fine if Creative Assembly introduced, I guess, a Confederation mechanic, which is slowly creeping in, but in a very glacial pace. Like, for example, you know, we had Tides of Torment, 3 factions. Only one of them was really introduced to have a proper Confederation mechanic. That is, of course, the High Elves. The Norskins have their own and had for a while, but it's very much dependent on you getting to that faction and killing them off, which isn't the best way to go. And then Slaanesh, nothing. Cathay needs to have a proper Confederation mechanic, maybe introduced around the time of BHASHIVA and the Tiger Warriors, if this is going to be the plan going forward. That is my feeling so far. If not, it's going to be a massive issue. People do like playing Pokemon. I know there's people that are against that for some reason. At the end of the day, it's an option that you can actually ignore. I like playing Pokemon, for example, because I like having my armies themed around certain characters. But when you look towards the Li Dao and the Fire Dragon realm, you've got the Monkey King possibly there, you've got Zhao Ming up there, and you've got another potential ally with Gelt. If you fight with Gelt, then you're going to have problems with Zhao Ming, and that's not really something that you want. You know, you don't want a civil war in Grand Cathay. Yin Yin the Sea Dragon is usually in Fu Chao, but we do know she's gone out, she's done different things. She can literally be anywhere, though a lot of people expect her to go for another round in Lustria, adding to, well, the Lustria ball that never leaves. There was like some characters moved away and then it's just turned into another shit show. But it's kind of expected considering that Lustria is quite large and largely vacant. I don't know how this would go though, considering that you'd need to have this character in Lustria but also being able to teleport back. The problem is that AI characters don't generally use their teleport mechanics. I have never seen Yuan Bo use his teleport, so it's a bit of a problem. You've got 2 characters over there. Where could you be placed? Other than maybe the Dragon Isles or whatever it's called over there, there's not much that can actually go on. And again, leading to congestion issues unless this character ends up in a completely different location. Maybe if CA finally decide to add in Nippon or whatever. Even then, I doubt it. Obviously, Yuan Bo can easily be moved, but then where does he get moved to? We do know that Creative Assembly got rid of the flybys for that purpose. That way, it's not cemented, you don't have to worry about certain locations. I think this is a problem that we can talk about worldwide, I guess. You want characters to be in their rightful homeland or in a place that makes a lot of thematic sense. You don't want them to be too close to other characters, however, of the same faction, or else you're going to be contesting for the same thing, which makes sense for certain factions, like for example the Warriors of Chaos, but doesn't when it comes to like the Empire, when it comes to Grand Cathay, Kislev. These factions you want to confederate a lot more with, or at the very least seek alliances. The problem is that, yeah, you know, Total War's alliance system is awful at best. Hopefully that changes for Warcore, at least I hope so. I don't want to harp on too much about the map, but it is something that needs to be taken into account if some factions are going to end up with more legendary lords. And I could imagine that. I don't see a time and a place where Creative Assembly is going to omit the other dragons. I'm not sure why people seem to think that, but it's easy money. Those dragons are going to be very, very popular, especially as we've seen how popular the first 3 have been, and obviously one of them coming out on the tabletop, which has been very, very well received, despite the fact that she was a pain to build and paint in some cases. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about Grand Cathay today, because obviously I do feel like we'll end up with 7, possibly 8 legendary lords if the leak for Mung the Brutal was correct, which, until proven wrong, I honestly do believe that there is a level of truth in there, considering that, you know, BHASHIVA and the Claw Speaker were proven correct. Nothing against that, to be honest, because like they look kind of cool. But it's the case of literally everything, right? So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. I took the weekend off to paint some stuff. I am getting some painting videos sorted. And yeah, I played a little bit of Resident Evil Requiem. It's surprisingly really good. So yeah, have a great day, guys, and I'll see you all again very, very soon. Bye.